Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of the Wellness Podcast. This episode is way special for me because this is one of the best episodes that I ever shot, and we discussed a lot of things. The guest is Aseesinder Kaur Khurana Ma'am, and we discussed about her career and her journey first because she's a lawyer by profession and then switched to psychology, and that's resonated with me because I am a BTech grad myself and I'm building in the space, the psychology space, for so long now. So a career transition or a shift basically resonated with me, and then we discussed about what's the difference between masters in UK and education in India in terms of exposure, because she went to take her masters from UK. So we discussed about international exposure as well. Then we also discussed about generational trauma, because we discussed a bit about her brand and how it formed throughout the communication. We came through that. It also correlated to a 1947 Batwara. I will not just keep it into something else, some else word, but yeah, it was 1947 Batwara. It was not Punjab Batwara, and not just India Pakistan. So we discussed about that, and that made me a lot emotional. So this is the best podcast that I ever shot. So do watch it till the end. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. I'm very happy that you accepted the offer to be here in the podcast.
Mm. No, I'm glad to be here.
Sure thing. So let's start. I would be very happy to start ahead with your professional journey. And by the way, for the audience, she's a lawyer, by the way, and she translated from being a lawyer to a psychologist. I'm very curious to know how that happened. How's your professional graph looks like? Yeah.
Mm. And honestly, I think I'm going to take you a little back because I think since I was a child, I was very drawn to like knowing the why behind human behavior. And I don't know how many people would relate, but if you know about Quora, do you remember there was a Quora, something like Reddit that existed back in the day? Now also it's there, but not as popular. I
Right.
would
Yeah.
go on that and I would read like psychologists answering questions that people had for them. And I think that's where the curiosity began. And this is when like iPods were the thing and internet had just come in. And that's where I think why people behave the way that they do, why are certain things normalized, why do we inherit certain ideas like about a good life, about a good relationship, what does that look like. I started questioning those things early on. So that was the curiosity bit of it that began early on, and after that I think slowly when I would read a lot about people sharing those things, I also got really attached to sitting in that space of hearing about people's stories. So these were two things that I think contributed to it. But life had a different plan, and I took a very logical decision into going into law. Parents were lawyers, that was the environment. And I was like, okay, fine, let me just go on the path that is meant, that's clear, that's sorted. Went into law. I think the 5 years that I was studying law, the things that again attracted me were mediation, human rights, things that resonated a little bit with psychology. And I still kept reading about psychology. I think I was never able to sit right with the feeling of being a lawyer. But I think one fine day, one of the scariest things that I think I've done professionally was to admit that I think I made a choice that looked perfectly sensible on paper, but it didn't feel mine. And I was
Mm.
fortunate enough to have a little bit of support from family who were like, okay, if you believe that this is what you're meant for, this is your calling, then go ahead with it. And I think that's when I was like, okay, fine, I'm just going to dive in. And I started researching on colleges that were there that would allow me without having an undergrad in psychology. And then started researching a lot, found a program that matched my interests, move ahead in that journey. And once I took that decision, then I think every class that I would sit felt like a privilege to be in, which is something I didn't feel when I was doing my 5 year degree. So I think I fell in love with psychology early on, but took the decision to pursue my calling later.
That's great in terms of the career options as well, because I used to say this nearly in every podcast when we have this conversation with psychologists about self-awareness. So a lot of client side as well, for the psychologist side as well, it's about self-awareness. And I used to take this example. For example, if you are asking somebody that, hey, who are you? Like normally, whenever you are meeting them casually, not professionally, when you are even meeting them casually, they have that professional mindset that, hey, I am an engineer, I am an IIT grad, I am an IEM grad, I work in Tata, I work in Amazon. So these have like a similarity of being associated to a title.
Mm,
So, of course, as a human, you are more than just a title.
mm,
You are not just about your professional belonging or professional calling that you are
mm,
currently working with. Professional
mm,
side is different. If you are introducing yourself as a professional person in a meeting or so, that makes sense in a
mm,
professional setup. But as a casual thing with your friends, for example, deciding a relationship, when you are just introducing that. So you can't just be like, hey, I work as an SD in XYZ company. Of course, you are a human first,
mm,
right? And your personal calling is something that defines a lot about you.
mm,
And I loved this thing when you switched from being a lawyer to a psychologist because that's a hard step.
mm,
And I resonate with it because I'm a BTech grad. I
mm,
don't hold a master's in psychology right now, and I don't interfere with psychology side. Of course, I have a dedicated team for psychology in my company. I used to take podcast. I am very heavily involved in the content part and the strategy part of the business. I ventured into the psychology industry. When I ventured it, uh, leaving a BTech tag, I would say, or the responsibilities or expectations that a BTech grad gets, it's something that I have to just keep aside first. Then I have to just venture into this particular field because it's about the personal calling as well. That hey, I just want to be here. I want to do something in this field. I want to make something for people. I'll just take one example. When somebody asked me कि भाई startup कर रहा है valuation तो इतनी इतनी होती है. So if you want to raise money, tell me what are the run rate, what the MRR, what are the ARR, that is annual run rate, how much money you are going to make. Um, do you dream about making 100 CR company? And I just responded this that hey, in last 1 week, my team told me, the psychology team told me that we saved two people from taking negative step for their life, and that's really like I can't explain that in words, but the feeling that I got is something like that is more than 100 CR in the bank. That's more valuable for me than making XYZ amount of reputation or money or whatever it is. So yeah, that's why I resonated with you very much, and I loved it. Being very honest.
I'm
Yeah,
so glad. Yeah, even when I hear you talk, it it is these feelings. Even I'm glad that that's how you feel as someone who runs a company. But as a therapist, also, it's the little moments that make me feel like every day that I do this job, I feel like I am so lucky. I am so lucky to be experiencing somebody's inner world because there are so many times when a client will come in and say things like, I've never said this to anyone, but I think I feel safe enough to say it. Can I say it? Should I say it? That the
right.
second is I think there are so many people who have just not been listened to. Like the basic. I'm not even applying psychological techniques or moving in that direction, just people who haven't been heard. And I think just sitting in that chair and hearing people out is the first step. That establishing that relationship. Or when clients come in and say that, oh, I said no the first time, like I didn't want to go and I didn't go and it felt so good and I wasn't feeling guilty. So I think those moments really stay with me and help me work on days that feel hard as well. But that's the purpose, that's the calling, which is I feel like satisfied in what I'm doing now.
Right, and I was just watching Samir Ina's Still Alive, uh,
Mm.
the stand-up that he recently rolled out, and that reached nearly 7 CR viewership. So 7 करोड़ लोगों ने देखा है वो. And I just analyzed something that while he was going through a lot of things in his life, whatever happened in India, he was in US that time for his international tour. Like he had nobody to talk to, and he chose to talk to his therapist about
Mm.
everything that was going on in his head. Of course, when you listen to that segment where he basically conveyed that something the therapist told him, he didn't follow that. He
Mm.
didn't follow what therapist told him. But when you just hear it throughout,
Mm.
after couple of days and couple of situations, he
Mm.
again went back to the therapist
Yeah.
and had another session.
Mm.
So, of course, like therapist is in your team, right? And it's always about the client's inner world
Yeah.
and what he's thinking, what exactly therapist can help in terms of analyzing, in terms of guiding him way better, in terms of uh, like conveying things better, in terms of feelings. Because my therapist in my last session asked about a particular situation to me that,
Mm.
hey, what do you feel about this situation? In that particular time, what was the feeling that came inside you? I was like, I don't know,
Mm.
right? I don't know because I never thought like that.
Mm.
I was just living my life, and something happened, and I was like, okay. And after 3 4 days, it was rolling through my mind again and again, again and again, again and again. But of course, therapist told me that first of all, you have to label your feelings and what exactly you're feeling. So after that, only you can be able to much more secured, or like you can feel much more secure in terms of your feelings when you know that how your feelings actually look like,
Mm.
right? So yeah, coming back to your journey, where did your masters, how did you uh, like started after the masters, how did you get your first client? We want to jump through that particular segment because that's the professional flow of the journey. So yeah, would be happy to hear that.
I want to get into that, but I also have controversial opinion.
Sure.
Um, I am not a fan of Samirana. Um,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
I fully am with you. What he did in that video was that he made so many people aware that mental health is a thing. So he did a
Right.
great job there. One.
Yeah.
Two, I think the bit about him saying um, hugging your father is important, telling him it's important. So many men, I saw so many videos on Instagram seeing men appreciating their fathers and hugging them, and it was such a beautiful moment. And
Right. Yeah.
I'll tell you a fun incident. So I'm big on stand up, and I go quite a lot to these spaces. And I had a chance of someone was doing a trial, and I was at that show, and I had a full blown argument with him at the show.
Okay.
And then I genuinely was a big hater. Like he doesn't take responsibility for what he does, and he really
Hmm.
should be saying all of this. And in that conversation, he was again saying something with regard to women, which I didn't appreciate quite a lot. So I spoke up,
Okay.
and he took up space, and he said that it's a portrayal that I showcase outside. It is not my opinion. It is what the public wants to see.
Okay.
And I think that made me feel a lot like, oh, like, okay, makes sense that you're being honest. And also that so much of the crowd in general wanted to see um, someone
Hmm.
become one or something going in that direction. And he picked up on that. Um, but he had the power to choose differently, which he did with that podcast partially. Um,
Right. Yeah.
that was nice to watch. That was nice to see. But yeah, you said that, and I just had that in my head, which I wanted to also say out loud. But coming to my journey, I've done a master's in India first. I studied at OP Jindal, and that was a really, really great experience because that was my first understanding of psychology beyond what I had done on my own. And there was a lot of space for questioning. So I again had a
Hmm.
space for curiosity, which was something that I didn't experience in my law school. To the extent that we were asked to question the actual research that exists. And that's what I developed even then when I went and did my second master's, which was at King's College London. There, this was defined more. And I think that becomes a strong part of who I am. So for me, it became not just learning about what psychology says, but learning to ask why psychology says it, reading more widely, questioning the assumptions, also starting to notice what and whose experiences are missing from the research.
Right.
So thinking about who's labeled as dysfunctional, who gets to define what is healthy. So that became a huge part of the kind of psychologist that I wanted to be. You know, someone who's questioning the assumptions that exist and noticing experiences that are missing. So that foundation was built at Jindal, which was then 100% in so many ways got the scope to bloom and blossom when I went to King's. That foundation was built there. And then at King's, I think was a very different experience again because there you're suddenly now thrown into the multicultural scope of things that you're not thinking about India and procedure and you know that
Right.
sort of because when I was in India, I was like, Acha, a clinical psychologist, RCI license, yahi karna hai, yahi banna hai. By the end of my first year at Jindal, I realized that no, I want to do something else. I want to explore more. I want to see. मुझे नहीं करना है purely clinical work. And I think King's really opened up that space because we had subjects like decolonizing mental health. So we were studying in the UK, but decolonizing mental health, which was very, very interesting for me. I also met people who widened my scope much more than what I was reading. So that was there. Then I also worked with the NHS there, which was in itself a very different experience where you meet all these people from different walks of life, since their mental health is covered in your insurance, in your health insurance. So you will meet from people from all walks of life, coming with different experiences. And in a developed country, the process is very structured. So I learned that. Then I came back to India because family was here, home was here. My plan was always to come back. Came back, and once I came back, I was like, okay, now everything's unstructured. So I was initially very confused. But I think in India, the requirement for more mental health professionals was there. The recognition was clearly coming, and I think that space I was able to fill by exploring different trainings, actually applying what I had learned about decolonization back in the UK
Hmm.
coming to India, because I don't think in India we are as much questioning the colonial beliefs or the research. So I think that helped me. Then I started Sukhara, which is my own venture, which was also in itself a very beautiful experience because this was a dream that I think I had when I was in seventh grade, eighth grade. That, oh, I want to be a therapist with this kind of a sofa. That's all I knew then.
Like
Um,
launching your own brand was
yeah.
something in your head for so long?
When I was in seventh grade, it wasn't, oh, brand, but it was, oh, I will be a therapist, and this is how my room would look, and this is how my sofa would look, and this is what I will do. Like, that was the idea. So when Sukhara started coming into being, one was obviously about what it looks like, what it means, what it stands for. The second was also how somebody feels when they enter that space. So I was very mindful of spending so much time in designing my physical space as well, that okay, there has to be something sweet, that there's a whole bucket of fidget toys that's there right next to the sofa. So I've put in things that I think I would have needed in therapy, and everything that I've learned from everywhere that I have been. But building Sukhara was actually like a dream coming true. And uh, a little bit of a personal side note as well, that this was something that, so my family was obviously very law and logic and whatever, right? But my nani was the only one who strongly believed in me and said ki nahi nahi, you do it, you're amazing, you're the only one who listens to everyone and manages everyone. I think you should learn more about how to do this professionally. So Sukhara comes from what she used to say. So at all times, so I'm Punjabi, and she used to say "Sukhi sandi rahe," "Sukhanda na hove." Like everything had that word. So that came from my lineage, from her, of Sukh, which means peace, and Ara comes from the other descent of, like, so they have been refugees who came from Pakistan to India, right? So Ara comes from cultivation there. And that's what I sort of combined when I made this space. So she passed away. She wasn't able to see Sukhara come into being, but I think she would have loved it. Yeah.
Right. So I just got goosebumps, and that's because I'm also Punjabi, and our ancestors, my grandfather and his family, came from Pakistan to India. We, like, as a family, personally saw and witnessed the journey. They started from scratch, and the name, the beautification of the meaning of the name is really something that's basically, I don't have words to communicate that. But yeah, I just got goosebumps out of it. And yeah, I recently watched मैं वापस आऊंगा movie.
Yeah.
That was also about like that clearly communicated that बंटवारा इंडिया पाकिस्तान का नहीं पंजाब का हुआ था.
Huh. Yeah.
Right, and I want to show you something. I just got this as well from the Wapis Aunga team. That's
Oh
Imtiaz
yeah.
Ali. Yeah, that Imtiaz Ali's autograph and the cap that
Wow.
uh,
Mm,
they gifted me. So yeah,
that's so
it's
sweet. That's
yeah. So I love the name. I love the essence behind it and the thought behind it. I loved it.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Feeling is what we're reaching to anyway, right? You know, I also had a very cool experience. I watched Main Vapas Aunga, and Imtiaz Ali came to the theater to um,
Oh,
say hi.
that
And I was like, oh my God, because I love him. I love him. And him
right.
portraying something like this, I think, was so nice. And I had a chat with him, and I told him, and I showed him pictures because um, so someone from our family did go and see the house that we had in Pakistan, and got pictures and everything. And it was just something that I don't know why, but it felt okay for him to see. um, I think
Uh,
it's I've also done a project on generational trauma with regard to the partition, particularly in Punjab, which was something that I held very close. This is something again that I did in the UK, not in India, which is what astonishes me. Ki there that there was space
ah,
uh,
Right.
which I don't know if I would have found here.
I don't have that much, you can say, data points or story that my family shared because family is a bit, you can say, closed and they don't used to just open up, especially about the partition. But
Mm,
my grandfather um, came to India after the partition,
mm,
and we got situated in Moradabad, Uttar Pradesh. Currently, I am here only. I just have the setup.
mm,
And my grandfather used to sell newspapers,
mm,
um, like to just
mm,
sustain family. And then uh, he started off small shop kind of thing for retail clothes.
mm,
And then my dad and his brother took it
mm,
over, made it a big thing, and because of that business, I studied. I'm here, so I don't have that much knowledge about what exactly our home looked like in Pakistan or how
mm,
it was, but
mm,
the struggling phase was there. The struggling phase was there. I know a lot of family members from um, yeah, close family members who used to
mm,
communicate that we
mm,
stayed in just a single room. There were nearly 15, 20 people at that time. And yeah, it was a bit struggle at that time. Not just a bit, it was huge. We can't even imagine that level of struggle. So yeah,
mm,
so
I-
that was for me. And
mm,
of course, when I watched this particular movie, not just
mm,
movie, I am very passionate about history. I am very passionate about what happened globally. I'm very much into geopolitics. So I used to study a lot about these things. So I knew what happened in 1947.
mm,
I saw a lot of series, documentaries on that. But the
mm,
representation this particular movie had literally just uh, made a space in my brain. यहाँ पे इंडिया में सेविंग्स कल्चर बहुत ज्यादा है. The
हाँ,
reason behind that is very deep down rooted. What I personally feel like looking at history, looking at geopolitics, looking at you can say studies, I personally felt कि इंडिया में ना जनरेशनल ट्रॉमा है और ये चीज हमेशा है कि भाई कल को छिन जाएगा सब कुछ.
और पंजाब के साथ तो हुआ भी है स्पेशली ओवर एंड ओवर।
राइट, राइट. पंजाब बंगाल हुआ है
हाँ,
ये.
हुआ है।
एंड कल को कोई भी आके बोलेगा कि ये घर नहीं है तुम्हारा, जाओ.
हम्म,
राइट, सो ऐसा सिचुएशन नहीं है तो मेरे पास होना चाहिए.
हाँ, सेफ्टी
राइट,
ना।
राइट, सेफ्टी नेट बनाना पड़ेगा.
हम्म,
So that's something.
हम्म,
Yeah. So this is the first time that I got this much emotional in podcast, and it's been 4 years doing this thing. And so yeah,
हम
coming to the point.
we connected.
Yeah,
That's what emotions show.
yeah, of course. I would be very happy to work with your brand as well. We would be discussing this after the podcast, but yeah, I just want to convey this. Whatever it takes to build your brand, I would be happy to do that.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad to hear that.
Done. Uh, Done. So,
Mhm.
coming to the point of the podcast. Um, yeah, looking at the journey when you launched your brand with a beautiful name, and uh, how did you get the starting clients, the few clients you approached to? How did you market yourself in terms of the market? Because psychologist में ना एक चीज काफी लाइक नो नहीं कि मार्केट करना अलाउड नहीं है यार, अच्छा नहीं लगता मार्केट करते हुए. सो हाउ डिड यू डील विद दैट?
Acha, I'll tell you, I don't have a very strategic answer to this. Because what I did was I involved myself in the community वापस आके.
ओके.
Right. So I started going to spaces that felt like me. And then my initial work was all word of mouth referral based. कि एक client आया है और that client has then gotten me for 3 4 clients. That's how it started for me. I was not on social media then. I didn't even have a website then. I literally just had a Calendly link. That's all I started off with.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because my focus initially was just that. Now, when I explore how to do it, I think there are quite a lot of ways. Something that I followed from day one that I followed till date is little old school, but I will still send little physical postcards
Hmm.
um, to whoever sends me a referral. कि अच्छा, thank you so much for sending in a referral, means a lot. I will write my little note and I will post it. That's something I've stuck through since the beginning of my practice, which I still keep. Other things have sort of added on, like obviously now keeping your website that defines you authentically, because certain people have actually discovered me just through the website. The therapeutic relationship is important. And if I am somebody who say brings my personality also in the room, I'm not a blank canvas therapist, right?
Right.
Uh, so that's what I showcase in my marketing. Then the clients who are comfortable with that will come with an informed knowledge ki this is who I am. Now imagine if I have a serious photo on my website, on my social media, then somebody who wants that is what will come towards me. The core that I think I would say to everyone and that I follow very strongly is to stay authentic to yourself.
So, yeah, thank you everybody for watching the podcast, and thank you uh, to be here. I loved it. I loved the conversation. That was the most emotional podcast for me.
I'm glad. Emotions help us connect, like I said, right? But thank you so much.